Hey everyone, Anthony Venuta here with In Touch Mortgage Solutions. It's Friday, Finance Fridays, and thank you again for tuning in for another episode. On this episode, I want to talk about what we see changing in the real estate market, what it means for you as a mortgage holder or someone looking to get into the marketplace, get a mortgage, as well as what to anticipate if you're a first-time home buyer as the market sentiments are changing. So stay tuned. We're going to dive right in. Once again, I do want to take this opportunity to thank all our supporters and viewers of the channel, everyone taking the time out of their day to comment, leave us DMs, questions about future topics as we continue our financial literacy journey and talk about everything from mortgages and real estate and everything in between. And on this episode, it is no different. I know we've been talking a lot about mortgages and real estate and a little bit less of what's in between. But I do think with the volatility of what's happening with, the war over in Russia and Ukraine, as well as the U.S. Federal Reserve, inflation, oil prices, sanctions, this definitely begs the question of what we anticipate and what we see moving forward. So obviously there's a lot of controversy, a lot of negativity, a lot of positivity. It all depends on what side of the fence you're on when you're looking at what is happening right now. So what I want to do is narrow down that focus and talk a little bit about what we're seeing here locally in Vaughan and in New York region. So I want to start off this video with the actual data that we're seeing come out from, I used Zillow. Obviously you can use any other type of, real estate analytics to find out your local region and see exactly what is happening. But it does draw a context of what we're going to be discussing. The average sale price for a home here in the New York region or Vaughan is $1.6 million. That is a monthly change of 8.4%. That is up quarterly from the last quarter of 17.6% and annually from the previous year, huge number, 28.5%. Obviously, we've seen home prices accelerate very, very quickly in a very short period of time. Now, we can put blame and find out exactly, find out who is to blame or pass the buck, as we see right now happening with the government and the Bank of Canada, as there's some accusations flying around that, the Bank of Canada has resulted in, this inflated asset prices and so on and so forth, the quantitative easing, something we've talked about on this channel and I've talked about several times before. Obviously, the correlation between debasing a currency and, the actual amount of money in the system is going to cause the dollar to come down and people are going to flee into assets, hard assets like real estate in order to make sure they're hedged against inflation. As for many people, homes or real estate is a hedge against inflation. So obviously, that is something to understand. The other concern are the supply issues. Obviously, we know that Canada is in a far worse situation than its G7 partners when it comes to housing all its inhabitants. So when you take a look at it and say, well, how many homes are there available for everyone that wants one? We fall very, very short. And that is a major driver for home prices to rapidly accelerate. Not to mention the fact that we have very aggressive immigration standards and, the amount of immigrants that we're going to see coming into the country are going to basically skyrocket, I think, to 1.3 million in the next few years. So that's going to put a lot of pressure as well on home builders and developers, and not to mention the development costs, the levies, the fees, the ability to get those properties turned around and start putting the shovel in the ground sooner. So that is something to understand what is happening here and why we think that home prices are definitely, have they peaked? I don't know. Are they going to stay where they are right now? Most likely, as the sentiments have changed. Keep in mind, February, January, December are generally lower inventory months as these are during the holidays and coming out of the holidays. But obviously, we saw in February relatively historically low inventories, less homes hitting the market. Now we're starting to see a few more homes hit the market. Now, that doesn't mean that we're in a buyer's market. We are still very strongly in a seller's market. So I just want to make that distinction. What's happening that we're seeing locally here in Vaughan, as you see the home prices go up, they're still selling, right, at the prices. They're just maybe sitting a little bit longer. And by sitting a little bit longer, we don't mean significantly longer. But what's happened is there was this thing called offer nights. I don't know if you're very familiar with it. If you're out there shopping for a home and you've been putting offers aggressively, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But basically, you would list your home 7 days of viewings, and then one night you would accept offers, and you would look at the best offers, obviously with no conditions, generally. And that was how the home was sold. Multiple people, 20, 30 offers, depending, multiples. You're seeing bidding wars and stuff like that happening. Now, slowly, we've started to see a little bit of change as, my clients are coming to us saying, we were able to put a condition of financing in, we're able to actually put in an offer and they're able to view it. So what's happening is they're being relisted. A lot of these homes that were previously on an offer night or, doing that process have now switched over to ask for what they're looking for on the home or rechange the price to a more reasonable amount, as many people might have been fishing for a higher price. A lot of sellers out there were saying, hey, if I can get, this amount of money, I'm gone, I'm selling. And then, now those things are changing. But obviously the spring market has a lot to do with it, as we still have a lot of pent-up demand. So this is when we talk to our clients, say, oh, but I'm going to wait. Listen, if you're going to wait, it's up to you entirely. That is a decision that you need to make if you want to be on the sidelines. But for a lot of our clients who are looking to get into the market, the opportunity is coming as they're able to actually present the offer. And if there's not several offers being presented at any given time, they might be able to actually insert a clause for financing or, maybe for home inspection as things start to pivot a little bit. So that's an important distinction, but we don't see necessarily home prices coming down because there's still not enough homes or quality homes to meet the demand, especially here in Vaughan, as it's the desirable location for many Canadians. And the reason behind that is we are looking right now at our database and seeing, clients that moved out to Guelph or Cambridge or Bowmanville, maybe, for example, Hamilton, unless it's a rental property, with, things normalizing and effectively as people are starting to return to work, gas prices are becoming a very important part of their decision. And maybe they're looking to sell in those communities and move back closer to the city to save on gas, maybe be closer to family, as those commutes may cost them more. So those are some of the things that we're seeing happening here in the mortgage marketplace. Obviously, interest rates, huge driver, as fixed rates are well over the 3.14%, anywhere from 3.14, depending if you're insured or conventional, all the way up to 3.5% for a 5-year fixed. And on the variable end, we're seeing rates at 1.7 to 2%, depending if you're purchasing 25-year insured. It all depends on the type of mortgage that you need, what lender you're working with, and obviously pertaining to your specific scenario. So, that is a huge push factor as well for, many Canadians who are used to the lower rate environment. If you're used to the sub, 1.5% interest rate, obviously anything over that is going to shock you. But obviously, when you take a long-term window and say last over 15 years, we're still in a very historically low interest rate environment. So yes, obviously fixed variable, you're looking at a 1%, over a 1% difference. If you think that the Bank of Canada is going to increase interest rates, several times, obviously having that discussion with your mortgage professional about what your anticipation is, what your risk appetite is always important. But, when you're looking at making this decision, always understand that in Canada, here in Ontario, if you're looking to get a mortgage approval, you're qualified at the current stress test rate of 5.25%. So you're qualified at the higher amount no matter what. But you're not actually paying 5.25%. You're paying the discount or whatever the rate it is that you're given, and you're stress tested at the higher amount. So if interest rates were to go to that level in, let's say, 5 years, or if your variable rate was to go up that high, you'd be able to, on paper, stomach that change. But that's the bank's, insurance policy to make sure you're qualified. But it's your monthly budgeting that's important to understand what your payments are. And that is changing sentiment for a lot of buyers because gas prices, fuel, food, all these things considered are playing into their monthly expenses. So obviously setting a monthly budget and going over your finances is important to understand. And if you need help from a mortgage professional, you can always feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to help you. But what I do want to do is leave off there with a lot of the information, what's happening overseas, the sanctions, the markets are obviously playing in. It's a very volatile time. A lot of clients will say, Anthony, we don't know. We don't want to get into the market at the wrong time. And I always say to my clients, I've never had a client come to me and say, I bought a home at the wrong time. What I've heard people say is I've sold a home at the wrong time, but not that they're disappointed that they actually purchased. And, that goes with the old adage, the best time to buy real estate was 5 years ago. So, what you see today, hindsight is always 2020. Take that into consideration. No one should be putting pressure on you to make that move if you're not comfortable. And obviously, if your budget doesn't allow it, Speak to your mortgage professional, get that pre-approval as rates are on the rise. Make sure you're locked in for at least 120 days so that if you decide to buy in that window, you're going to be getting the most aggressive rate. And we'll leave it at that, wishing everyone a wonderful Friday. Hope everyone has a great weekend ahead as the weather is getting nicer. And until next week, have a great weekend.